little less than 30 minutes ago, Officer Brad Lunsford of the Las Cruces Police Department was taken into custody by special agents of the New Mexico Attorney General's Office and charged in connection with the shooting death of Presley Eze. The events that led to Presley's death started in the afternoon of August 2nd, 2022 at a gas station here in Las Cruces. The gas station attendant made a 911 call, and officers were dispatched to that location. They made contact with Presley and another individual who occupied a vehicle and attempted to verify his identity in the course of their investigation. After being unable to identify and verify his identity, they attempted to detain Presley, and a struggle ensued. The officers ended up on the ground with Presley, and after struggling for a matter of seconds, he made contact with one of the tasers that was in the holster of one of the officers who responded to the incident. He did not point that taser at anyone. He did not deploy that taser at anyone. Officer Lunsford, in response and in our judgment, committed a real unnecessary escalation of force and violence in that moment, drew his service weapon, put it to the back of Presley's head, and pulled the trigger and ended his life. We at the Attorney General's office communicated with the district attorney here several months ago and indicated our willingness to undertake the investigation and potential prosecution of this matter. Unfortunately, we were not provided with a complete investigative file containing all of the videos and images that would be necessary to evaluate this case. But after receiving those videos and conducting an independent analysis, which includes consulting with national experts on the use of force, we determined that criminal charges were justified in this context. We recognize and are joined here today by Presley's family, by his mother Loretta and father Isaac, by his personal friend and now family attorney John Sedipo, other attorneys representing the family, and Dr. Bobby Green, the head of the local NAACP. The presentation of criminal charges against a law enforcement officer is always very complicated and very challenging in this country. And I will not at this moment get into all of the facts and legal arguments that I'm sure will be a part of this case for as long as it takes for us to get justice for this family. But there are a couple things that I want to say at the outset that I think are extremely important for the community to hear and for the family to understand. And I think we are all in agreement that after people in this community and probably communities around the country have an opportunity to see the video evidence, there is going to be a strong reaction. There will be a strong and understandable sense of anger on the part of community members who are rightfully concerned about whether or not justice is equal in this country. There is likely to be a counter reaction that divides members of the community. And we have seen in other contexts that oftentimes this can lead to things occurring on the street, violent protests and social unrest. And I think I can speak for the family and for others that while we all, I think, will understand the sense of outrage at what precipitated this case, that to honor the family and to honor the pursuit of justice, that we can do everything that we can so that calmer heads will prevail. And that is not to say that any member of our community should feel in any way restrained from expressing their outrage, their concern. But I ask and urge members of the community to do that with some sense of the dignity that the family is bringing to this occasion. And I don't think it would add anything on either side for anyone who has a strong opinion about what we're doing here today, to do so in a way that degrades this family, that harms this community. And so that's the first thing I'd like to say. And the other thing that I would like to urge community members and for members of the media to understand is that it is a natural function of presenting a criminal defense in this context to look at people like Presley who haven't lived a perfect life, and to use the challenges that they've had in their lives or the shortcomings they've had in their lives to paint a picture of somebody who is maybe less deserving of justice and less deserving of concern. And it's important for us to understand, when you look at this family, when you look at these pictures, that we start this process by recognizing that this was somebody's son, and this is somebody's brother, and this is somebody's father, and that he is entitled to dignity, and that he is entitled to be treated fairly. And while I respect strong advocacy and the ability of people to present a defense, I think it's important for people to understand who he was as a human being, and not to simply distill his life into seconds of a video captured on lapel or captured at a gas station, because that's not defining of everything about who he is. Even though in this context, it will be what people know about him most in his life. He was bigger than that, and he was more than that, and he meant more to people. And it's important for you to hear from them about what he meant in their lives. And my hope is that in using the criminal justice system to try and vindicate his life and find justice for him, that we can do so in a manner that honors everything, not only that he was, but that he might have been. And I think it's incredibly important for us in law enforcement to have that broader perspective. For myself, in looking at these videos and reviewing the investigative reports, I was left not only with the inescapable conclusion that we had to bring charges in this case, but that we need to start having a broader and more complicated conversation about why this keeps happening in this country. And what I can tell you unequivocally is that regardless of the outcome of this prosecution, we have a much broader task in front of us in this community and all across the country to look at these moments, and these are going to be hard moments for us to look at, and try to figure out what lessons can be learned. This was a tragedy that should never have happened. It should never have happened. And I want everyone to understand that when Mr. Presley lost his life on the pavement outside of that gas station, the original call that came out was for petty theft. Petty theft. And we have to get to a place in this country where policing is done in a way, and the training that we provide to police officers is grounded in a way that focuses on a balance. Because there are times when police are going to be called upon to use force in extraordinary circumstances. But in my judgment, what you will see in this case is an example of an escalation of force and a situation that could have and should have been avoided. And I know that the family is in agreement with me that separate and apart from this criminal prosecution, that we are all committed to trying to figure out a new way for police officers to be trained, to be focused on the right issues and the right ways of intervening in difficult situations. But the bottom line is, we had a meeting this morning with Presley's mom and with Presley's son, and we need to stop having meetings like that in this country. Because nothing that we will do in this trial is going to bring him back, and nothing that we do in the courtroom is going to do justice ultimately for him in their eyes, unless we finish the task and do the hard work and start having hard conversations about how we do this the right way and how we change an aspect of what's happening in this country that we haven't been able to master. And that's the broader challenge, and it's beyond this case, and it's beyond the people and the arguments that we're going to be making. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John Sedipo, who both knew Presley and is a strong advocate for the family.
Thank you, Attorney General Torrez. It's not usual for me to be at a lack of words, and words enough cannot really tell you how I feel about this case, only because I should not be here on this podium this morning in New Mexico talking to you about the death of someone I consider as my nephew. I've always examined New Mexico, and I was saying it to Attorney General Torrez this morning. I always thought about our Santa Fe, some happy place whereby it's full of artists and people getting together and expressing themselves and being extremely friendly. So when I heard about the death of Presley Eze, and I heard that it happened in a place called Las Cruces, New Mexico, there was an instant dislike, because you hear about these things in the news and you say it's a horrible thing, but you never think it's going to happen to someone you know because you think it's too distant. In the same light of what Attorney General Torrez just stated, there are too many times that this is happening, it has to stop. The lack of humanity that's been expressed by those who are supposed to protect and to serve, whereby ordinary human beings become like animals who have been hunted down on the streets for what they call a petty theft. At the end of the day, it's $2.36 or $3 for a can of beer. If only you knew Presley Eze, then you will know that it was never about the money. He was not a petty thief. God knows he wasn't a saint, but he was a very good man. A great son, a great student, a great brother, a great nephew, more importantly, a great father and a great husband. A father to a son who will only have pictures to tell who he is or what he looks like, but yeah, he looks exactly like him. And yes, I'm not ashamed to say that Presley was really, really handsome. He stood about 6'4", weighed about 220 pounds. He was into working out, but it was exactly what he stated, a gentle giant. If only you went to church with him. He was more interested in buying food for those who did not have. He was a nurse, and he worked as a nurse, taking care of people, especially the elderly, nursing and working in nursing homes. So the irony of it is, when he was actually killed or murdered at a gas station, think about it. Who steals a product and then stays there for another 30 minutes to 40 minutes for the police to come there? If you actually believed he stole it, you could have done something else to him. He grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, fairly affluent neighborhood. He went to the school system over there. His mother, like him, was a nurse manager. His father with a degree in pharmacy that worked for the state of Connecticut. 3 other siblings, oldest son of Nigerian immigrants who came to this country. His sister, medical school. Youngest sister, an attorney with an MBA. Younger brother, they're a bunch of underachievers. But Presley was an entrepreneur. He gave to his community in Hartford no matter what you said. If you saw anybody who needed something, Presley was the one to give him a ride. Everybody in our church in Hartford loved him. The only time you see Presley fight, if he's fighting over a pot of jollof rice and how many plates he's had. Yes, he loved food, but he loved to share the food too. But that's who Presley Eze is. It's not this person that was shot in the back of the head at a gas station in Las Cruces off the highway because they were tired. It's not this person that was left on the pavement for about 7 hours. Nobody calling the ambulance, nobody caring for him. To the extent that when he was buried, the casket had to be sealed. Going against the traditions of our culture that a casket has to be opened. I don't care which nationality you are, I don't care which color you are, but it goes against the laws of nature that parents have to bury their young. I think that's the real crime against humanity. This officer left that morning with the hopes of going back to his own family. And he's somebody's son too, probably somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin. And what he did was with a single bullet, he ended the life of another. The parents will never know what it's like again because he had already moved to West Hartford, Connecticut. He'd moved back home. He was finishing on some jobs over here, but he never made it back home. When he came back to us, he came back in a casket. When he came back to us, he came back in a way that we didn't want to see him. He came back in a way of sadness. Sadness that's only too common in America. And this is about the humanity of it. We can talk about the police, as the Attorney General said, it will never bring him back. But this is becoming way too common, whereby there's a high disregard for life. I don't know whether we're in a Hobbesian state, whereby indeed the life of man or woman is truly solitary, selfish, brutish, and short. Because the way they treated Presley Eze was they made his life extremely short. And it had not to be that way. It's bad enough when people die young from natural causes, but they should not die in the hands of those who are meant to protect them. He was a nurse, he was an entrepreneur, he worked extremely hard. And I know it's so quick for people to go on Google nowadays and try and say this person is bad or whatever occurred. But if only you knew him, it would light up any room. You can look into anything else you want. His was not a life of violence. You can look into anything you want. His was not a life of fighting. You can look at the pictures. He's always smiling, always laughing, always giving. So the irony of it all is this. A nurse is left alone on the pavement. And as we've stated before, even if that somebody did that to your cat or your dog, you'll be angry, let alone a human being. And it's happening way too many times. Way too many times whereby ordinary people going about their business are becoming endangered species. And that should not be the case here. I'm so sorry that I'm before you today. I'm so sorry that I'm repeating myself. Because words fail me. Because I knew Presley. I knew him, I mentored him, and was hardworking. Like everybody else, he had his shortcomings. But he did not deserve this. was going to go home and help his parents so that the family unit could be together, so that his son, little Isaac, named after his father, could learn about being an Indigo person. The Igbo is from Nigeria, so he could learn the language. He's already learning Spanish, but doesn't speak a word of Igbo. But that did not occur, only because of this single act. This single bullet that sends a resounding noise all over the country. We're here too many times in a solemn place, and we shouldn't be. It saddens me that we're here today with great people, and I commend the Attorney General, I commend Joe and Shannon Kennedy that have been working with us. I commend them. I commend Ms. Green and all the good people at the NAACP, because we would not have even made it this far if not with their help. And it's happening in this country today. So no matter what you think about Presley, you know what they say, ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. You don't want to be in that position of Isaac and Loretta Eze, crying for the loss of a loved one. Because if we do not act as a community, if we do not raise our voices to protect one another and reach out across socioeconomic and racial lines, then there's not going to be any change. I think it was one of those German philosophers that said, and I'm paraphrasing that, once they came from the trade unionists, and because I was not a trade unionist, I did not say anything. Then they came for the teachers, something to that extent, and because I was not a teacher, I did not say anything. Then they came for me, and there was no one to speak for me. I'm asking for each and every one of us to speak up for Presley Eze, so that this will not happen to you or to your loved ones. This was not an accident. This was an intentional act. And regardless of what you think, Presley was a very good man, a great son, brother, nephew, husband, and father. And in America, you know, we treasure the holidays. But for his family, there'll be no more Presley at Thanksgiving, no more Presley at Christmas, no more Presley at the Indigo New Year Festival, no more Presley at the 4th of July, no more birthdays. All is a result in silence, and the silence is his absence, and his absence is the lack of his presence. So I'm asking that those who are in the position to speak up, which is each and every one of us, speak up on behalf of Presley Eze, regardless of what you think of him. I'll let the criminal justice system take care of itself, but I implore you to please speak up and put an end to this. Above all, yes, I came here to praise Presley Eze. He was a very good man, a very good son, a very good father, husband, brother, nephew, friend, community member. Thank you so much. It saddens me that we're here to a meeting like this, but I cannot thank the people who have showed up, stood up, and lent their voices for us. I'm speaking on behalf of Presley. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the press corps. I'm very grateful that you all are here to listen to me. I am Presley's father, and I do congratulate the AG, my lawyers, because this marks a very significant day in our life as parents of Presley, because I've always asked them, when are they going to When is the world going to hear what they did to my son? Since 2nd of August last year, when Presley was murdered, he came to us, when the police came to announce it, all my community zeroed into my house. Life changed in my house because Presley is the most loving kid I have. He gets along with all his siblings. Look at my beautiful wife here. When she had a fracture, Presley will pick the mother like this upstairs to her bed. And there's nowhere my wife and Presley is so glued together that there's nowhere my wife is going that Presley doesn't follow. You go to Nigeria, he follows. Nigeria is still mourning him today. He went into solar business and wanted to help the people down there to turn them into business people. No matter what Presley does, Presley cannot kill a fly. He never starts any trouble or fight or whatever. This is a boy who understands what love is in the family, that when he married his pretty wife, he told me how they met. It was in the church. Dad, I'm getting married to this girl. She thinks just like my mother, only prayerful. She prays like my mother. And we said, go ahead. They got married. And they had a child, this beautiful boy, a young, handsome boy. And Presley said, to the sisters, he said, I need Igbo name, but his first name is Isaac. So he's a junior. To me, not even to him, to tell you how loving this boy is. Presley will go to Nigeria. He will give out his laptop. He would give out tablets, shirts, shoes. And the mother would say, what are you doing? I buy more when I go to America. So, you look at what happened to my son. The police who killed my son is a son of somebody. And his father cherishes him as a son. He may have a son himself whom he cherishes as a son. But on the 2nd of August, this guy got up in his house and decided that he would go out and murder my son. No matter what they are saying, they don't look like what my son will do. But nobody will do whatever they claiming he did and stay along there. And if it's not premeditated, how did he just take up his gun and shot him on the head? When you shoot somebody on the head, I was in the army in Africa. And I know what it means to handle a gun. You shoot somebody on the head, you want him dead. So he came out that day to kill my son. So I will beg that everybody who looks at these things, I want you to understand that they came out that day, whatever they had in mind, they wanted to kill my son. And we watched it from Connecticut. My kids are all computer savvy. We were there watching the dead body. And the dead body was on the hot weather. No ambulance. You called ambulance and said somebody did something in my store. Then when there's a dead body, you couldn't call the ambulance to take him to the hospital. What do we call that? Premeditated murder. And you left him there from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we were watching it till 10:30 p.m. our time. Did the ambulance take my son to the hospital or to whatever, to the coroner? We didn't see that. We saw a truck and they took him with us. Now, the police came 2 days after that and reported that my son was killed. I was coming out of my house and I saw 3 police officers. Can we go in? Can we give you water? Can we do this? Can we do that? I said, what? I have lived here for 40 years. What are you coming to my house to do? We went in and they're trying to calm me down, calm my wife down and whatever. We heard the news came out. Presley was shot dead. So today, what is happening today is what we expected, because I was talking to these civilized men around me and women of the Attorney General, my brother here who's an attorney, and the Kennedys, the NAACP, and we come today to tell a small story about my son. No matter what anybody's telling you, is a son that left our family, and our family can never be the way he was when he was in the world. Because even after the police came and told us what happened, they started playing games and wanted to cremate the body. You thought he doesn't have people? West Hartford is where we know they know everybody. Please know the kids over there. You don't go shooting people's kids. Any of my kids do anything, they will call me. They don't kill, they don't shoot kids. So as the story comes out, and you watch those stories come out, and the people may ask you, what do you know? Please, my son is not what they're portraying him to be. They came out and murdered my son, and they're trying to play games to cover what they did. But we left it to the Almighty God to look for the way to provide justice. Justice. And we're using the AG and all these friends and all these agencies to try and say, this is what they saw happen. And let that Almighty step into it and say, we can get him back. We can get him back. He's gone. But we're happy a day like this that we were able to come into it. And thank you, everybody, for showing up.
Thank you for that, Mr. Eze. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Joe Kennedy, along with Shannon Kennedy, my wife. We are attorneys in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who represent families who've lost loved ones in similar circumstances for many years. And when families lose loved ones, they reach out to us for information. And they want to know primarily what happened. And they long to know what the final few moments of their loved ones' lives were like and what led to the police use of force and the police shooting. And we have very powerful tools in this state called the Inspection of Public Records Act. And if used properly and used as they're designed, they provide the civil justice system and the media with the means to tell stories of exactly what happened, to give the history of what happened. And in this situation, part of the pain and the agony of this family is the city of Las Cruces failed its duty to provide complete and full information about this shooting until relatively recently, until within the past month or so, because we had to file a civil lawsuit to get this information out into the public. The city of Las Cruces hid information from us. It obscured videos and has not treated this family with the respect and dignity that any family deserves, whether the shooting is deemed to be justified or not. And what I'm doing today, what I'd like to do today, is call for broader viewpoints and broader examination of the city of Las Cruces' policies as it relates to examining its own officers' use of force and how it comports with the policies that the city of Las Cruces has related to use of force. We have a real missed opportunity here, and we don't want to miss any more opportunities to actually examine this activity, this police detention, from the moment it starts for areas where de-escalation can happen, where it doesn't have to go into a struggle. It doesn't have to go into an officer body slamming Presley Eze on the pavement and creating an extremely volatile, dynamic situation that no one was in control of until a bullet was put in this man's head. There are many opportunities to train. There are many opportunities to correct, but we have to take them. And the city of Las Cruces primarily has to take them to really examine this use of force to make sure this is not happening again in this community. And we hope that work with the family and work with the Attorney General's office to make sure that this use of force is unnecessary and de-escalation policies are put into place. I'd like to hand it off to Bobby at this point.
Thank you, Attorney Kennedy. I would like to thank all of you who came out today, many of you whom I invited, because I think it is important for the community to be aware of what happened to this young man. We cannot have a situation where the police can shoot a man in the back of the head for allegedly, and I say allegedly, I don't know if he did or not, but we cannot have the police shooting a man in the back of the head, an armed man, for a beer. That is unacceptable, and I was determined once I started to hear the details of this case that we had to make sure that we would not allow this to go unserved. The officer needed to be notified that this is unacceptable. The department needs to know that this is unacceptable. I told the city council, the city manager was there, the mayor was there, the chief of police was there at the city council meeting. I told them we cannot have a situation where the officers feel that they can shoot a man in the back of the head. So finally, we have, thanks to Attorney General Torrez, we have a criminal case. I thank the Kennedy attorneys because they would not stop. I couldn't get the information. I tried to get the videos, the police reports. The name of the victim was all covered up for months, and it was the attorneys who finally were able to get it. Then it was redacted. It was, as far as I can say, it was a cover-up. And we cannot have officers thinking that they can shoot somebody in the back of the head and then it can be covered up. I think they believed that Presley was just another black kid that nobody would have anything to say about. It would go away, it would disappear, but this time it did not disappear. It cannot disappear. I met a beautiful family today. There's a sadness about this family. The mother, who just for the first time today saw her grandbaby, the only thing she has left of her son, Presley. I met a father today who talked about how his son would give, if he had $6, he would give 5 to anybody that needed it. He was a generous young man. He was a smart young man. He was a black man. He was unarmed. I'll say that again. He was unarmed. There is no need, under any circumstances, to shoot a man in the back of the head when he is unarmed. I think that's pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and therefore, I believe it's important for us to make it known to the city of Las Cruces that we cannot live in a community where people are afraid to call the police. I've heard it several times that people, oh no, I'm not calling 911. I don't want any parts of the Las Cruces Police Department. That is a travesty. We deserve better. Presley deserved better. Presley could have been my brother, my nephew, my cousin, my friend. We all know how painful it is to lose a family member, but to lose a family member like this, and then for them to treat the body as if it was just nothing more than garbage and try to cover up the evidence. They were getting ready to cremate this young man's body without the permission of his family. It is outrageous. And so, community members and leaders, I thank you for being here. I'm asking for your support to make sure that we call for this officer to be removed from the Las Cruces Police Department. He has been charged. There is no reason to have an officer employed by the Las Cruces Police Department who thinks so little about a human being that he will shoot him in the back of the head regardless of what he calls his reason. It just is unacceptable. So I thank you for your support. I look forward to giving you more information about this and for us to make sure that we stand up for justice. This young man will never, he cannot come back. We cannot bring him back, but we can maybe prevent the next young man from being shot in the back of the head. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. I want to thank the family for sharing their thoughts. I know how difficult it is for them today, but today's an important step in the right direction, I think. We had a long conversation this morning about the challenges that are inherent in any prosecution involving a police officer. It is a difficult thing. It's always a difficult thing, but it's necessary. And we will not step away or stand down if there's a moment where we are called upon to try and deliver justice. And that's what we're here to do. And with that, I would open it up to any questions, members of the media that may have questions about the charges, about the case, or any other aspect of this that we can address. I don't know, but I can ask Ms. Kennedy to address that.
Yes, he did have prior complaints of excessive use of force. I think he was also has been sued for excessive use of force in the past. The city of Las Cruces has his personnel file and is well aware of his history. This man had no business being a police officer, and it's a sad day that he has continued to be a police officer for over a year when he's taken a human life in this matter.
Yeah, this is part of the problem with the city of Las Cruces. In order to get the personnel file and the disciplinary history, we had to agree to a confidentiality order that we were going to litigate in court to strike, to reopen. So we can't right now talk about the details of any disciplinary history because we made the exchange of the documents, but we'll be litigating in court to ask the judge to allow us to share that publicly. Thank you. As far as I know, he's serving. He was serving on the streets as far as we know. We haven't heard any, I haven't seen any documentation or anything else. This is also part of the problem. We haven't seen any internal affairs review. There's been, as far as I can tell, and we're in the early stages of our discovery and our litigation, we haven't seen internal affairs review of this actual incident. So as far as we know, as of today, he was with a gun and badge patrolling the streets of the city of Las Cruces.
So the homicide statutes in this case set out very clearly the standards of proof that are required, for example, to prove first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and manslaughter. In examining the moments that led up to the fatal shooting, we believe, based on our analysis, that it best fits under the statutory definition of manslaughter, which covers a killing without malice and that is insinuated or provoked by a sudden quarrel or heat of passion. And we certainly think that that describes, based on the information currently available to us, the state of mind that the officer would have had at the moment that the fatal shot was shot. And so, you know, for first-degree murder, you have to be able to prove a very high burden of premeditation. At this point, we don't have any evidence of that. We don't have any evidence of frankly, malice or racial animus. If that changes, we certainly have the opportunity to amend the charging document to reflect that. But at this point, based on the evidence, it's properly categorized as manslaughter, and that's what he's been charged with. Can he identify to the agency that we? Well, thank you for the question. We, in advance of the arrest warrant being filed in district court today, made arrangements for the peaceful surrender of Mr. Lunsford. We did that in coordination with the Las Cruces Police Department and the Doña Ana County Sheriff's. He was taken into custody, however, by special agents of the Attorney General's office. He was booked. We are, at this point, not moving forward with a motion for detention because, in part, it triggers very tight timelines in terms of the presentation of evidence. We are still engaged in an investigation. We have to coordinate with out-of-state experts and the like, but we certainly have the opportunity to revisit that in the future. I will note that given current standards in place in the state of New Mexico, we are probably unlikely to prevail given the nature of this case in demonstrating that he presents both an ongoing threat to the community and or risk of flight. But we will certainly re-examine that as we move forward. The next step will be a probable cause determination, either by way of a presentment to a grand jury or a preliminary hearing, but that certainly hasn't taken place yet. And so that's the status with respect to Mr. Lunsford. Officer Arbogast has not been charged based on our evaluation of the evidence. We were only able to present a case, a criminal case, against Officer Lunsford for firing the fatal shot. And that's what we've done here today. So Ryan, there are a couple of things that I'd like to address with your question. The first is on the prevention side. Regardless of what happens in this criminal case, whether it results in a conviction or an acquittal for this particular officer in this, under these circumstances, we oftentimes find ourselves in a moment where we discuss whether to charge somebody or not charge somebody. The case is resolved, and then we go back to the same system. And so I think from my own perspective, the deterrent effect of successfully prosecuting a police officer is not going to be as powerful as taking a hard and deep look at training standards, curriculums, the way we screen and recruit officers, the way we orient them to their jobs. And what I mean by that is there will be a lot of focus in this trial on the moment where he killed Presley. But there needs to be a conversation, a structured and deliberate conversation that involves the community about what happened from the moment he arrived on the scene until it ended. Because from my perspective, there are so many opportunities in review and looking at this interaction for, rather than escalating and escalating and escalating the situation, to actually de-escalate the situation. And I've worked with officers who are very, very good, and it comes usually with a lot of experience. And they show up on the scene and they know how to calm everything down and everyone down. They know how to talk to somebody with a sense of professionalism and respect. And we need to figure out a way to replicate that and eliminate what happened in this case. With respect to the infrastructure for prosecuting police officers, this is something that has been under consideration in the legislature for probably the better part of a decade. And in other states, they handle it in very different ways. They provide frontline district attorneys with independent resources, investigators, and prosecutors to handle that. I know they've had that in a number of states around the country that have been very successful. In certain other states, they consolidate all of that authority under the Attorney General's office, and that's an alternative approach. But one of the things that I think is always been missing in this conversation is a sense of the importance of independent investigators, truly independent investigators and prosecutors. And that's a fundamental feature, but also the resources necessary to get these investigations and prosecutions off the ground. A lot of people have a misconception, for example, about the capacity of the Attorney General's office. We have fewer than 15 frontline prosecutors, and we are handling a variety of cases from across the state. We are certainly not organized or resourced to handle every officer involved shooting in the state right now, given the investigative and prosecutorial demands of what this is actually going to require. And so whatever path the legislature chooses, they must start by recognizing the scale of the need, the scale of the resources that are required for this. But if we are going to move to a place where we have restored public trust and public confidence in the criminal justice system, we have to resolve how we're going to handle this, and we need to do so in a professional way and in a way that is resourced to the level that meets the community's expectations for justice. We can't any longer live in a situation that Mr. Kennedy described, where these investigations drag on for as long as they do. There is stonewalling about the release of information that can no longer be acceptable and be allowed in our system. And we need to really think hard about what kind of resources are dedicated to resolving that issue fundamentally for the community and frankly for the benefit of the good police officers around this state whose work and ability to safely and professionally police their communities is unfortunately undermined by the kinds of things we've seen here and talked about today. With that, I want to thank you again for being here. I want to thank Loretta and Isaac for making the trip, for Elena, for bringing your beautiful baby boy to be here. I cannot tell you how important it is for our prosecutors and our investigators to have an understanding of what Presley meant to you. And I want you to understand that we will do everything in our power to fight for him and fight for justice and do what we can in his name to try and build a better and more just society that we can all be proud of. So thank you all for being here. We do appreciate it.